So what happens now? Hey, Sean here from SpeedCubeReview.com. I'm just going to do a bunch of solves with a bunch of different puzzles while we talk about the big issue that's on everyone's mind: what happened with the RS3 pricing. If you don't know, the RS3 Super, or the Super RS3 V2, is more expensive than both the YS3 and the new WRM version 9. That's right, the budget puzzle, the RS3 Cubing Classroom, Mofang Jiaoshi, is their most expensive puzzle. Now, it's not actually that crazy compared to other puzzles, but what we expected. And before we get into it, let's just kind of talk about the history of pricing of cubing. So I've been cubing for almost 10 years and I've seen quite a few changes. When I started, the prices were between $12 and $16 for a high-end one and like $3 for the cheap one, the Guanlong. And I think let's first look at those ones, YJ and Moyu. YJ was the parent company of Moyu. So the sub-brand Moyu made higher end puzzles and they ended up costing more. Why did they cost more? No idea really. That could have been that they used thicker plastic. It could be that they just charged more because they could, or that they were really cutting costs close with the budget ones. But either way, that's how it went until Moyu broke away from YJ from issues that I've heard rumors but don't know exact details of. And at that point, Moyu started making budget puzzles, specifically the Mofang Jiaoshi Cubing Classroom line. That's where we got the MF3, which was basically a Guanlong just with different colored plastic. And that's also when YJ started making more higher end puzzles. And then we had those different lines. Now, as far as price changes, we saw puzzles that were around $16. I remember when they got to like $18 or $19, everyone was like, oh, why is it so expensive? Then they started making $20 puzzles, and specifically GAN started doing that. And every subsequent version was usually more expensive. And I will say without a doubt, it's marketing. There's nothing in those puzzles that warrants it to suddenly be an $80 puzzle as opposed to a $20 puzzle. Now, there is inflation, there's changes, but that's an insane amount. The thing is, they're kind of stuck doing that at this point. If they made, let's say, the GAN 14 and it cost $30, while the GAN 13 cost almost $80, people are going to be like, well, does that one just suck? When it's really just what marketing should be or what prices are. So they're really stuck making those higher end, more expensive puzzles more expensive just because of where they at. Now, these bubbles tend to happen and then burst. As an example, when I started cubing, big cubes, 5x5, 6x6, they were expensive. They were $30 to $40. And then Yushin came out with a 5x5 that worked great. And if I remember correctly, it was under $20, which suddenly everyone else had to drop their prices just to compete because the Yushin one was so good and it cost so cheap. You might as well just get that one. Now, what was the cost difference? I have no idea. Were they basically making a penny or possibly losing money on puzzles? Maybe. Or were the $40 ones just so insane that they were making 10 times what it cost to actually produce the product? So there is some speculation here. What does it actually cost to produce a puzzle? And something that has more pieces or magnets inserted into that needs someone by hand putting those in there. I'm fairly certain they don't have machines that are inserting all the magnets or putting together a 6x6 puzzle. So we started along this line though, maybe about 5 years ago, where we had budget puzzles and more expensive ones. Budget ones were $10 or less, more expensive ones were $20 or more, and we rarely had anything in between. I feel like puzzles that cost maybe $15 were looked at in a weird light. They weren't budget, they weren't the more expensive ones, so they kind of were just pushed off to the side. People didn't want to spend money on it if it didn't seem like they were saving money or getting the best product, even if it was a good product on its own. And I guarantee I said it, I am not going to go through all my videos, but I know I said that there's an issue when the RS3 came out, and it was a good puzzle. It was something that there were some top solvers that were jumping to it, and suddenly Moyu had an issue. They had a puzzle that people preferred over their top of the line one, their flagship puzzle, and it costs a lot less. So that's where changes came in, where they started using matte plastic for the cheaper ones, and then they just use matte plastic for the more expensive ones as well. They started adding more things. So for example, Qi on their Tornado has two adjustments, one for elasticity and one for the actual depth of the centerpiece. And their more budget line only has one of those two settings on it. I'm guessing the difference is not very much as far as putting it all together, but it makes their budget one look less enticing because it doesn't have as many adjustment settings. And then here we are today. Moyu came out with so many puzzles. They're definitely trying to flood the market on purpose, releasing so many things so no one talks about anything but them. But their WRM V9, their YS3, and their RS3 all had the exact same adjustment settings. The plastic felt pretty much the same. The only difference were some of them were UV coated, which really, in my opinion, go back to glossy plastic. But if people want matte plastic and then UV coated, fine. I've heard matte plastic is easier to produce. I don't know if that's true. If someone does know anything about plastic manufacturing, put that down in the comment section below. Let me know. And I made a video 1 month ago comparing those three puzzles and talking about the difference and what I feel the differences are and the cost of them. A few weeks after that, I got a puzzle in the mail that were the V2 of the RS3 that had the UV coating, so they all have the same coating, the same tension settings, and RS3 costs a little bit more than the WRM. Their budget line has caught up. Now, I don't think they're calling the RS3 a budget puzzle anymore. They're not calling it the Cubing Classroom puzzle. It does have the Mofeng Jiaoshi logo on it, but that's about it. And if this was a new puzzle, if they said this is, I don't know, the GTS version 9 or whatever version they'd be at. I guess the GTS is a WRM version, but also a Weilong version. Let's say they called it Aolong, like the Aolong 2023 or something. There we go. That's something new. People would be like, oh, cool. It's like the Weilong, but, you know, a different version. It's kind of like when they had the Weilong and Aolong out at the same time. They had mini Weilong, mini Aolong. So it would kind of work. But because they called it the RS3, everyone's panicking. But I think above all, we have to hit a reset. We have to hit a hard reset. We've hit this line where we have a $25 puzzle, a $35, and a $45, around that range. GAN is still going to charge what GAN wants to charge, and there are still budget puzzles that are just as good. As you can see in these solves that I'm doing, I'm just going one cube to the next and seeing what I get. Now, a lot of this might just be like conspiracy and speculation over what happened when and what their plan is. What you have to remember is this is all marketing. It works though. I think a lot of you know, especially if you've been watching the channel more than a week, you know that there is not one puzzle that is better than the rest. If you've seen any of my mega comparisons, you know that there is not one puzzle that is the best one on the market. If you're a younger cuber and you don't know that, you think the $80 one is the better one to get. And if Moyu is breaking even, losing money, or just making a little bit of money on the RS3, they know that if they make a $45 version of the RS3, people will still get it. And now other companies like Qi, they have an amazing product. The Tornado version 3 is incredible. The version 2 I thought was incredible as well. Kind of wish there was a magnetic core version of that. I made one myself with that kit, but anyways, I'm getting off track. That's an amazing puzzle, but it's kind of getting like lost in all this discussion over Moyu prices and GAN prices. If there's a new company, I feel like the only way they would stand out is by making a puzzle that is $100, that doesn't really do anything new, but it costs a lot. Maybe they give you a bunch of extra settings and magnets and whatnot with it, but that's the only way they're really going to stand out. If they make a $30 puzzle, people are going to go, okay, cool, I'm going to use those other ones that I know work. If they come out with a $10 puzzle, before they'd say, okay, cool, I know the RS3 still works, I'm going to use that. It was really hard for anyone to step into the market. And it seemed like last year there was a lot of designers branching off on their own, maybe leaving other companies to do that. I think YG's in a situation like that too. They know how to make puzzles. They've been doing it for a long time. But if something just does not click with, let's say, one distributor or one YouTuber and they just say something negative about it, it's done, because people want consistency. Even with the Tornado, I've had people say, oh, I'm not going to get it because the core breaks. Not really. It was just a very small manufacturing thing, and they changed it. Supposedly, Moyu had a core-breaking issue, but they fixed it still. GAN had core-breaking issues, and they fixed that. People might not even remember some of those times. So this is my long-winded way of saying, get whatever cube interests you most. If you want to buy the $80 one, get it, because you're not going to be really happy unless you actually get the thing you've been wanting. If you are sitting there going, I'm fine with the $10 puzzle because I know my times will be pretty much identical, then get that $10 puzzle. I recently had SpeedCube Shop send me the RS3 2020, and it's great. It's a really, really good puzzle, and it's under $9. If you're a parent watching this, I know your kid wants that really expensive one. And I know that you can get them the cheaper one, and they will have pretty much the exact same times. And I also know that they're not going to be happy unless they get that one puzzle they really want. So that's really on you to decide what you want to do with that. So what happens now? My assumption is that budget puzzles are going to get worse on purpose. Something like the Meilong is going to maybe get a little more flimsy feeling. Feel like something that, I wish I had something more stable, bigger magnets, or, a different plastic. The ones that are under $10 are going to be extra flexible. They're going to purposefully not have the adjustment systems of the more expensive ones. So these companies can put in those adjustment settings, or those extra magnets, or the glossy plastic that they took away and then gave back with UV coating, and charge more and say it's worth that because you get all that extra stuff with it. They've been doing that, but I feel like what Moyu just did with that pricing really said that that's going to happen, and that's going to be the new thing. And it'll fluctuate a bit. Maybe one company will make a really good one, and it'll, everyone will have to come down to it. Keep an eye out for that. Let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know if you feel like the naming was the biggest issue, and if they called it something different, then Moyu wouldn't be in this sort of situation where people seem to be very frustrated. But let me know your thoughts. Leave them in the comment section below. Hit like, subscribe for more content like this in the future. And as always, keep watching SpeedCube Review for more news and reviews.